إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبد الله ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا بعثه الله رحمة للعالمين نصلي عليه في الأولين وفي الآخرين وفي الملأ الأعلى يا رب العالمين أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله عز وجل كما جاء في محكم التنزيل يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله ولتنظر نفس ما قدمت لغد واتقوا الله إن الله خبير بما تعملون. Brothers and sisters, will begin with praise and gratitude. This is the natural response to one who has recognized the multitude of countless favors and blessings that surround us all from the moment we were created until this very moment we are sitting here answering His call, seeking some guidance from the revelation to set our minds and hearts on a mission in life to be His servants. I bear witness that there is no deity and nothing worthy of worship except for God alone, and I bear witness that Muhammad, the son of Abdullah, was His final prophet and messenger He sent to mankind, that we could all be organized as His servants, working together collectively as believers, as a community of believers, so that we could fulfill our purpose for which we were created. You see, if we look in the Quran, we will find this constant encouragement, this constant call for us to engage in seeking knowledge and seeking understanding and seeking wisdom and how to deal with reality. And there are three basic phases by which we are to interact with knowledge. They emphasize engaging revelation, seeking divine purpose through the message. And they also emphasize these same three concepts in terms of how do we deal with the world around us and how do we find ourselves in the consequences of life and guided through to make good decisions. The first of these steps is at-tafakkur. At-tafakkur, which could roughly be translated as deep contemplation or thinking deeply about something. In the Quran it says, وَأَنزَلْنَا إِلَيْكَ الذِّكْرَ لِتُبَيِّنَ لِلنَّاسِ مَا نُزِّلَ إِلَيْهِمْ وَلَعَلَّهُمْ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. In this verse He's telling us that the Quran was revealed to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then he lived an example that embodied this Quranic philosophy of life. And so in that, if we think about that and we ponder over it and contemplate this revelation and this example of this prophet, then we will be blessed through it. So that's how he talked about at-tafakkur in terms of revelation. We should think deeply about it. We should look at the Quran and how the prophet lived it and think deeply, not just surface value, read it and then come to a conclusion. It was meant to be much deeper than that. That's why we have anthologies of tafsir books and commentaries on the hadith and all of these schools of thought in comparing what exactly is the meaning of these texts and how do they relate to guiding us. But in terms of practical life solutions, when he talked about وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْخَمْرِ وَالْمَيْسِرِ قُلْ فِيهِمَا إِثْمٌ كَبِيرٌ وَمَنَافِعُ لِلنَّاسِ وإثمهما أكبر من نفعهما ويسألونك ماذا ينفقون قل العفو كذلك يبين الله لكم الآيات لعلكم تتفكرون. So in this tafakkur, as it relates to the beginning of intellectual dealing with reality, he talks about alcohol and gambling. And so he says, people are asking about alcohol and gambling. Meaning what? They are concerned about them. They've got the idea from what they've learned from Revelation so far that things that cause harm are genuinely something we could be concerned about. Islam is about bringing benefit and averting harm from individuals and society. So they're saying the people are naturally concluding without a revelation that alcohol and gambling may be haram. So the first verse that was revealed directing them to deal with it, it said, you will see that there is some benefit in them, thus why people engage in alcohol and gambling. But you will see the harm and the sin and the corruption is much worse than the benefit. And then he talks about this tafakkur. He says, in that are signs for those who will think about it. Meaning what? Look at alcohol. Look at the effects of drinking alcohol. Look at gambling and how many lives were ruined and how much wealth was wasted over that. So you will start to see that this is something that Revelation has a solution for. So it was in the beginning phase where this verse was revealed, and years later it was finally prohibited completely. And Allah was teaching people to think about things so they could understand why it would be prohibited, even though it is widespread, commonly known and accepted in Arabia at this time, that drinking is okay. It's normal for them. So he's teaching them to think about it. The next phase of intellectual dealing with reality and revelation is at-tadhakkur. At-tadhakkur is to bear something in mind, to take a lesson from knowledge. So after you've been contemplating and thinking about something, at-tafakkur, tadhakkur is now to take lessons. Now I'm starting to see the point. Now I'm starting to arrive at some sort of conclusion about the benefit or the harm of this or that thing. So this is, the Quran talks about revelation. He says, مَثَلُ الْفَرِيقَيْنِ كَالْأَعْمَى وَالْأَصَمِّ وَالسَّمِيعِ وَالْبَصِيرِ هَلْ يَسْتَوِيَانِ مَثَلًا أَفَلَا تَذَكَّرُونَ. So in this verse, he says, you will see revelation in the people who are following guidance from their Lord. And they are like two groups. You will find one of them is blind and deaf. And you will find the other one is seeing and can hear just fine. Are those the same? Meaning, the values of someone who reads Revelation and lives accordingly, you will see their morals, their character, their contribution to society better as a result of their connection to this revelation. Whereas one is disassociated with it and is following personal desires or the desires of the corrupt society, which is without these revelations, then you will see that they are causing many problems. So are those two the same? Right? So he's telling us, take a lesson from the clear difference between the two. And the Quran is called tazkirah. The Quran is called dhikra. The whole message is a lesson to bear in mind. You know? Yatadhakkar. That someone thinks about it and contemplates enough to where now instilled in their mind are certain lessons, certain points of moral focus that are reminders that are there. And the Quran is telling us that it's not just enough to learn it once. You have to keep reviewing revelation in order to establish yourself as a holder of that knowledge, as someone who maintains that knowledge. And so the last and important, most important level of this intellectual engagement of the revelation and life circumstances and how Islam guides us therein is at-tadabbur. At-tadabbur, because you say, you know, ad-dubur is behind. Mudbirin, you know, they're moving away from it, right? So they say, هَذَا يَنظُرْ إِلَىٰ عَوَاقِبِ الْأُمُورِ. Someone who looks at, with deep thought, they arrive to this, you know, they started with this tafakkur, this deep thought. Now they arrived at some lessons. Now at tadabbur, they are starting to look into the consequences of either following these lessons or not following these lessons. So now tadabbur is considering consequences and forming constructive opinions and lifestyles as a result of this deep thought and contemplation, looking at the lessons of comparison of applying or not applying said lesson. So that is the tadabbur. So that's why I said about the Quran, أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ وَلَوْ كَانَ مِنْ عِنْدِ غَيْرِ اللَّهِ لَوَجَدُوا فِيهِ اخْتِلَافًا كَثِيرًا. So it says, shouldn't people really contemplate hard to take lessons from the Quran? If they would have, if it would not have been from God, then they would have found lots of contradiction in it. You meaning the consequence internally of the revelation, you will see if it was just some person writing it, you will see mistakes in there. And when you don't see mistakes in there, which we have not found mistakes in there, then now you must think about the impact of this book in your life. Meaning, if I choose not to read this book very often, if I choose not to take lessons from this book, which has proven itself to not just be some guy saying stuff, it has many, many evidences. This is something that, unfortunately, the modern age and many people who are taking Islam by culture, meaning I follow it because so-and-so said, or my society did, or my family does. And so when asked with some deep question, they don't have any answers because they have not been following lesson 1 and lesson 2, so definitely they're not at level 3. Because there's no tafakkur or tadakkur, so there is no tadabbur. There is just do because we said so, and then people are thinking that all religion is the same. In that it's just some old stories of people, and so therefore, why should we follow all of that? I've got my life to live, right? But one who is following the Quran and learning the Quran in this way will make a very well-informed decision and see that it is not just a claim in terms of the Holy Quran. It is something that can be proven with empirical, actual evidence that this book is said by Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the final messenger of God, and internally its reality is miraculous. It is something proven not to just be some statements of a guy. Therefore, when you come to that conclusion, that clarity of faith, which would lead to a shahada and give value to a shahada, a declaration of faith, then you feel the consequences of either following this book or not following this book are very, very important, right? So that's what that is talking about. So notice in the Quran and the Sunnah, nowhere does God think or contemplate things. Nowhere does He take lessons. He's not yufakkir or yatafakkar. He's not yatadhakkar or... He is yudabbirul amr. Because His knowledge and wisdom is complete and absolute. He has no place in that. Lakin huwa yudabbirul amr. Time and time in the Quran, He is referred to the one that sets the system and the mode operandis of cause and effect and how things work. And so you need to go to Him for that. If you want to understand your role in life and purpose and meaning, you would need to take that from such a figure. And that's what He says in the Quran. He says, فَالْمُدَبِّرَاتِ أَمْرًا. He sends out His angels throughout the earth to take care of all of the realities and responsibilities and fulfill them as He has decreed in the system that He has created for them. So, I really want us to now take a look at something very focused in terms of these concepts. I want us to do a little tafakkur about a specific concept that the powers that be, meaning capitalism, the desire to make a lot of money for a small group and convince everybody else in their debt, drowning realities, that everything's fine for you, just go to work, make your money, entertain yourself, educate yourself, and keep in that hamster wheel. Right? That's the capitalist measures. And the media tells you about things and focuses on things that really, you can't really do anything to fix. So it's very important for us to take a little tafakkur. So I just want to say that, raise your hand if you've lived here for more than 10 years. Let me see. Okay, those of you that have lived here more than 10 years, isn't it odd that we have 90-degree weather well into October? Did anybody ever think about that? Tafakkur fi khalq as-samawati wal-ard. We're now contemplating what's going on in the weather. Like, why is it 90-degree weather, which is summer weather, right into the fall, And so that is something that is strange when you look at the history of Charlotte, North Carolina, as well as the rest of the world. And so if you study this thing and you do some deep tafakkur, you will find that 2016 and 2017, the years before this year, were the hottest by vast, numbers than any other year in the last 100 and some years. Over 150 years of very scientific attempts at gauging the environment, we're finding that in the last 15 years, temperatures have been going up and going up and going up like that, right? And it's getting hotter and hotter and hotter. And you notice you're not seeing very much any snow anymore. Some people can remember 15 years ago that there were weeks of snow in Charlotte, North Carolina. You will not notice that anymore. So we're just doing some tafakkur right here. And so now, if you look at the world, since the 1970s, the world temperature has been drastically going up, and then in the year 2007-8, it really started to go up even more. And if you look at from 1880 until then, it's pretty much just like this. And then in the 1970s, and then now, just like that's how the line looks of the world temperature, you know, up and down a little bit around a general number, and then boom. So we have to think, why is that, right? Why is it happening? Why is that? Is that normal, right? So that who should we just decide, who should we ask? Should we ask our friend? No. We ask the scientists. Scientists, you study this stuff for a living. That's all you do. You understand the science of physics and the environment and what's going on in the atmosphere and what's happening on the earth and what's the difference in the history, because through carbon, you know, dating and all kinds of other things, they can look back at general temperatures throughout millions of years, actually, right? But we're talking about since we were actually gauging. And so, should we go to people whose job is to burn coal and politicians who are getting paid lots of money for people who burn coal for billions of dollars? Should we get our information from them, as the president has done? We should not go to them. They're trying to make billions of dollars, right? And so when we go to the scientists, they say that we are doing things to this planet that is creating drastic changes in the environment. So let me just ask you another question, okay? Are you all aware that 5 hurricanes hit the United States in the last 2 years? Actually 2 in the last month, right? Is that normal? That is not normal. There is no such recollection in the history of mankind. In the last 2 years, we had, let's see if we can get the names. Irma, Harvey, Maria, Florence, and now Michael. Okay? Thousands of people were killed. Hundreds of billions of dollars of businesses, homes, and city infrastructures were completely wiped out and destroyed as a result of these hurricanes. There are tsunamis and other things happening, and drastic floods happening in drastic proportions, especially in the last 15 years. In the last 15 years, it is getting very, very bad. It is getting very bad. So the reality is that we are destroying rainforests by like 4 football fields a second in order to build corporate structures. And usually what we do is we put agriculture there, and mostly like animal agriculture, and then they're releasing methane gases on top of that, and now we're creating all these carbon and methane gases that is holding the heat in, as it would have normally just left or been absorbed by all those trees, because trees absorb carbon dioxide, right? It's a simple math of science, what's happening. So we are burning all this coal and all this oil, and then we are cutting down all the trees that would help recycle carbon and then give us oxygen. And so now there's huge disruptions, and now the Arctic Circle as well as Greenland pretty much lost the vast majority of all of its glaciers. And the extinction of polar bears is very imminent. The extinction of coral reefs will be in the next 10-15 years. Coral reefs play a very important role in the ecosystem of the ocean, the acidity that's rising in the ocean. So all these things are happening. You know what the Prophet ﷺ said about cutting trees down? He said, "Man qata'a sidratan sawwaba Allahu rasahu fin nar." Whoever will cut down a tree, Allah will drag his face in the hellfire. Right? So somebody might say, well, that's just in Mecca. Some scholars said that, but the majority opinion of the commentators, they say things like this: وَالْأَوْلَى حَمْلُهُ عَلَى أَنَّ النَّهِي وَالْوَعِيدِ في من اعتدى على شجرة سدر أو نحوها مما ينتفع به الناس والدواب بظله أو ثمراته فلا يجوز قطعه. So the scholar said, no, actually the proper understanding of this is that any trees that are crucial to human and animal and insect ecosystem, we should not be cutting them down. That's what the Prophet is saying. Unless it's something very valuable and it's not ruining people's lives and things like that, which is what's happening. Right? Similarly, about burning all of these things and ruining, لا تفسدوا في الأرض بعد إصلاحها. The Quran tells us many times, don't mess up the earth after it was already made beautiful for you. So don't burn up a bunch of gases that's going to ruin the So now you have another issue, is that the depletion of the ozone layer, because of all these different other chemicals besides the carbon and the methane, which is keeping the heat in, you have other chemical things that are destroying the ozone layer, which is bringing in UV rays, which people are getting cancers from, and so forth, and it's getting very, very hot in here. So basically, many of you have seen these movies that come out. You know, there was, I think, one famous one, I think it was Armageddon. You know, basically what it is the end of the world is coming, and the astronomers and the physicists are telling the government, well, you know, this meteor is coming and the end of the world, we have to do something big time drastic. We have to achieve some amazing thing to stop this from happening. So the United Nations, with hundreds of top scientists from over 90 different countries, they came together so that this doesn't look like one country or another country. So they all came together, and then early this week, I want to ask how many of you know this. Early this week, they issued a warning to the world that if we don't drastically change our culture of life as we know it, within 12 years, before many of your kids will graduate high school now or college, okay? If we don't completely change the direction and the culture of our way of living, then this earth is going to be unlivable within 100 years. That's what they're saying. Hundreds of scientists from all over the world came together and they issued a report that what they expected back in the 1980s when they first started talking about that, in terms of both the rise of the world temperature and the rise of the ocean, it has more than tripled what they thought it was going to be. And so they're saying that this is why you're seeing all of this terrible weather and hurricanes and droughts and all of that, and it's going to get worse and worse and worse. So they said you can expect lots of hurricanes, cyclones, tsunamis, droughts, heat waves. You can expect rising ocean levels. So you have so many millions, hundreds of millions of people live right on the coast in the world. So that's going to create what? Hundreds of millions of refugees just running from the ocean, right? And they need to go somewhere, but there's really nowhere for them to go. So there's going to come into lands where there are other people. So this is going to create a mass hysteria. Shortages of food and water, food and clean water, destruction of ecosystems, extinctions of species, spread of diseases such as malaria and salmonella on drastic proportions of millions and millions of people. That's what they're saying is going to happen. The UN released that. Raise your hand if you actually read and heard about that UN report. So we're looking at, I'm going to say, about 5-10% of the people here. Now you might be asking, so but why is that not a big deal? Why can't the media all say, hold up? The UN just basically came and told all governments of the world, issued a lengthy report with all this scientific data that has been basically being compiled over decades, saying the asteroid is going to hit the Earth in 12 years if we don't do something about it. And nobody cares. Right? So the reason is the same reason why when Donald Trump was asked yesterday if he thought that Jamal Khashoggi, rahimahullah ta'ala, you know, that he was murdered by the Saudi government in Turkey, in the Turkey consulate. He said it looks like that's what happened. He admits it, because obviously they gave him that knowledge. And so then they asked him, you know, well, what are we going to do about it, sanctions and this and that? He said, well, to my knowledge, this guy is not an American citizen. And they were like, well, no, he's a permanent resident. He's actually a journalist for the Washington Post. And he was like, well, you know, at the end of the day, we need to sell $110 billion of weapons to the Saudis so they can destroy Yemen, okay? So we wouldn't do anything about this. Meaning what? Human life is not important like money is, okay? So the coal and oil industries think the same way. It's called capitalism. It's about money over morality. Get as much money as you can and make sure that only the top group of a very select group get all that money. And everybody else gets very small amounts and stays in debt, and they're just struggling just to get it, make it by. Right? That's the system of capitalism. Okay? And so we need to think, where do we stand in terms of this? So inshallah, we ask Allah to guide us and give us the means to follow His guidance. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. So yes, we heard the khutbah that the asteroid, a meteor is going to hit the earth and everything's going to be doomed in 12 years. It's very serious stuff. If you study all this, you will find everything I'm telling you is 100% facts. This is not nonsense YouTube clips of conspiracy theories and all that other stuff a lot of Muslims waste their life away with and have no benefit from. This is the real world that we're living in. And the question is, what are we going to do about it? The number one thing that can change this and turn this around is in this country, where voting does count and it changes things. If you gather together and make coalitions with people who know about this stuff, and you educate many other people in your families and friends and in your circles, and you make this a top priority in your social media posts, and then you make sure that you demand from any candidate that they must have a policy on this issue that is the drastic radical change that all the scientists are telling we must have. If you do that, this can bring about the change that we're talking about. To save the world. I mean, some people wanted some racist guy to make everybody rich, and so they voted and they got him. Surely, for morality, we can all come together to save the world by voting people that can change the dynamic of the relying on these burning of fossil fuels. Because it can be done. These same scientists have given us all of these tools to know how we can solve the problem. The number one thing is to transfer all of the energy system from coal and oil and all of that to solar and water and wind, and in some places if it's beneficial to use nuclear, which is something that is debatable amongst people, but the general consensus is it is not burning things into the thing. We just need to figure out what to do with the waste that is coming from there. And so that's number one. Number two, cars that are driving around, and particularly airplanes and jets, are creating major problems with this. So to emphasize the point of carpooling and to use the light rail, anytime you go to uptown, just park over here and take the light rail. It's a very feasible thing. Buy an electric car or a hybrid car, use the bus if you can. Number three, stop eating so much meat. So what does that have to do with that? Actually, it has very much to do with that. The concept of big meat industry in the world, it is, basically in many places they're cutting down rainforests in order to make these big beef and big. So beef as a main problem. Beef, these cows are letting loose methane gases worse than hundreds of buses in just one, beef plant, right? So to cut down on your meat is going to make your health better, lower all your cholesterol, right? The Prophet ﷺ did not eat meat every day. This is not the sunnah. This is capitalism at work, again. Right? It was not normal for the Prophet ﷺ to eat meat a couple times a week, maybe. That was normal for him. So we need to cut down on eating meat. Insulate your home. Make sure you bring one of those people that can give you the insulation in your home. Program your thermostats. Now it's coming winter. Just learn to, have like these, blankets and, nice thick, those little thick things you wear on your feet, and just wear some nice, thick clothing, and just keep it around 65 in the house. No problem. You can live like that. You'll be okay. In the summertime, try to learn how to keep it around 74, 75 rather than 71, 72 in the house. It's getting used to it. Then number 5, support local organic fruit and vegetables. A lot of the big fruit and vegetable industries, they are creating lots of problems as well. And if you just make it local, all of what they do in their big industry is growing, as well as the process of transporting all of that and all of the things that are burned in that process. Recycle everything. Take around a water bottle. Why all the new water fountains, they have the thing where you can refill it? This is basically a policy that has came from aware people of this issue. And last but not least, don't waste. Don't waste. So as Muslims, the Quran said, لا تسرفوا إنه لا يحب المسرفين. Do not waste. He does not like those who waste. We can't be extravagant wasters. We have to be people who are taking care of everything that we have and seeing it as a big blessing, and eating all the food that we have and using less things and reusing and recycling and avoiding plastic. Plastic is a big problem, but it's the easy way to make a lot of money. The reason why plastic is so common, not because they just love you so much want to make your life easy. It makes billions and billions of dollars for a small group of people, right? So ask Allah to guide us to have knowledge and wisdom and understanding, and to protect this earth as we are instilled as its protectors, Khalifatan fil ard. It is our responsibility, Ya Allah, get us to the point where we see this serious issue and that we address it through knowledge and understanding, through what we see in the world and the scientists, through what we found through the revelation and the sacredness of your creation and our responsibility therein. Ya Allah, guide us, make us among those who are guided, make us among those who are steadfast, give us purpose and meaning in working for you and protecting all that is sacred that you have made sacred, and to remove all that is corrupt and evil. Ya Allah, we ask you to forgive us and make us among those who earn our place in an eternity and bliss in your presence in the hereafter. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi.